back to the Up North Pod. I'm Chris, that's Kyler, and that's Alex, and we are continuing our Big Sky Conference previews. But before we cover the Eastern Washington Eagles, guys, happy lazy first Sunday. We had football Saturday. How was your guys' week 0?
It's good, man. We actually got to watch some football. There were some not very entertaining games. When the actual, when the spreads came out, we thought there was going to be some good games. Then it ended up being a lot of blowouts, which we expected. A few FCS versus FBS games that were close, but overall, man, football's back, and that's all that matters to me. So I'm happy.
Yeah. I mean, no, it's not FCS related, but that Nebraska Northwestern game yesterday was a fun watch. So yesterday college football was played in Dublin, Ireland, and Honolulu, Hawaii, all in the span of one day. So that's how you know we're back.
It's officially the world's game.
I thought FAMU held up pretty well actually versus North Carolina, being not that many guys, and I don't think North Carolina even played that bad. I just thought FAMU played pretty decent. So yeah.
All right, not bad. Let's get into our quick little 50-50 here before we preview the Eastern Washington Eagles. It's a Sunday. We're going to have NFL this time next week. When you guys are hanging out on Sunday,
2 weeks.
For a couch or a recliner?
I'm a couch guy.
I mean, I prefer recliner, but what I have are couches. So
yes.
See, I'm a couch guy.
I'm a chair dominant guy.
You're a what?
I'm like a chair dominant guy. Like I love a good chair,
I've been looking for like my chair in college. In one of our out of houses, one of my roommates worked at Moscow Furniture Center, so he learned how to like upholster. And he upholstered this old wood recliner, and it literally became his chair. Thing was freaking one of the comfiest things ever. But I found nothing like it, and I don't know how to upholster, so I just accepted my fate as a couch guy. I'm the lay on my right side for a bit, roll on over to my left side. That's me on Sundays.
But, yeah, same.
And yesterday,
you can see it over my shoulder. So that's
where I get it. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
All right, 2021 in review for the Eastern Washington Eagles. They went 10-3, went 6-2 in the Big Sky. Started the season 7-0. Ended the season 3-3. Now, obviously, that includes the playoffs. Somebody noted the other day, like, I don't understand. This doesn't equal 11 games. And I'm like, well, yeah, it's the playoffs. And unless you were NDSU, everybody ended the season with an L. Notably, they did finish ranked number 7 in the country. I didn't include it, but they had another Walter Payton Award winner in Eric Barriere, which we'll talk about later. They only made it to the second round of the playoffs, which is, for Eastern, considered a down year. And they went 1-1 versus their rival Montana, and hence that's who ended the run there in the playoffs. Any takeaways for Eags fans? We'll go Boatman and myself, and then we'll go to Kyler to tell us how we're wrong again from the Eagles in 2021, Boatman.
I mean, you still have one of the most dynamic playmakers in the NCAA and FCS last year. I don't know if I'd call it disappointing because, I mean, you do make the playoffs second round, beat Montana as well. I guess it's kind of crazy because I feel like the expectation for Eastern and its fans, and Kyler, I'm sorry, but this is just my outside view, is you have to make the national title game. Which great expectation to have, at least maybe not from Kyler, but from a lot of Eagles fans, which is, I think is actually kind of crazy because they've only won one national title in the last 12 years. So, I mean, it's great to have lofty expectations, but you kind of feel disappointed if you don't. And I know this is FCS, and I played FBS football. This is like one of my big problems with the FCS is that a lot of people go away being disappointed in their season.
Yeah. My takeaway, it parallels Alex's. It's kind of crummy to see the end of Eric Barriere's career not end in a national title. One of the most electric players to ever play in the FCS. Just a phenom of sorts. And then it does take you to one, though. And as Alex touched on, like Eastern does have really high expectations. They made a metric shark ton of semifinals. So to not make a finals with that kind of talent, I imagine a lot of fans are a little let down, but we'll touch on the quarterback situation a little later. For Eastern fans, I'd say, you know what? it's like the opposite of Montana State, where Montana State, well, they didn't play, but they lost to the Grizz in the regular season, but they got their laughs in the playoffs. I don't know if Eastern fans would have, if I gave them that deal, hey, you're going to lose for the first time on the Red on ESPN to the Grizz, but you'll go to the national title game. How many of them would have taken it? I think, it was a successful season. They beat everybody they probably wanted to beat except, Montana in the playoffs. So I still think it's a good season. I know Eagles fans might not feel that way, but if I'm an Eastern fan, I said that Aaron Best was somebody I needed to see a lot of, and I feel like in the last 2 years he's proven to me that he is a lot of, and I would feel pretty confident in him leading this team in the 2022. Kyler?
Yeah, the takeaway. So I definitely don't think the expectation for most Eastern fans is like national title. I kind of set the bar to quarterfinals. If you made it to the quarterfinals, pretty successful season overall. If you didn't, probably didn't live up to the expectation at least, our fans have, which is, you could say, probably an unrealistic expectation for a majority of FCS programs. Eastern, at least since I've been there, 2007, that has kind of been the expectation. So something like this, it's a little bit of a down, but at the end of the day, we still finish as a top 8 team, which is basically, we probably still should have been seeded, right? We had arguably, the outside of Weber, the most difficult schedule in the Big Sky last year. To not get seeded was a little bit of a question mark, especially because, they were just viewing it as that one D2 game when Jacksonville State did not return the favor and they canceled last minute. That's all we could get. But probably should have been seeded. I don't think there's 8 teams better than Eastern Washington last year. Just sucks. You got to go and end it at Montana, which is one of the most difficult places to play, especially in December. So, if we played probably any other team outside of Montana and North Dakota State, I think we had a pretty good shot in the playoffs to at least move forward, unless we're going to James Madison. But overall, it is a season. Eastern Washington, you made the playoffs. It is what it is. You got a lot of success. But some takeaways are, you lose your OC again, right? That's been pretty standard in the last 10 years at Eastern Washington. Typically have an OC for about 1 to 2 years. You lose your DC again. We've had about 5 DCs in the last 5 years. So we got to have some new coordinators, a couple new dynamic players. So, just hopefully you learned a little bit from last year, especially in the areas that you struggled, special teams, stopping the run. Hopefully you improved a little bit, because you're going to have to be a little more reliant this year on those 2 position groups. So hopefully you took some of the good with the bad, and you can improve in the areas you really needed to improve in.
All right. You guys want to hear a joke?
A riddle? Okay.
Joke. Aaron Best, hot seat. What's the hot seat meter on Aaron Best? Golden throne or flaming recliner?
Man, if you would have asked me, because it was insane. 2019, he was on the hot seat. The year after, we were in a national title game. The Eastern Washington fans, this is probably where Boatman's getting at. The expectation is sometimes a little bit too unrealistic, right? You went 6-2 in conference in 2019, and Eastern fans were calling for your head. You ended as a top 20 team, and the Eastern Washington fans were wanting you fired. That is a little ridiculous. I think he's kind of proved the doubters wrong. He's definitely not in a hot seat. He kind of runs our athletic department. So as long as, his worst year has been 6-2 in the Big Sky, I feel like every single Big Sky team and coach would love to have that type of success. So he should not be in the hot seat, even though there are some crazy, fewer now Eastern Washington fans who think he's, dragging this program down. He still has a .704 winning percentage in his 5 seasons at Eastern Washington. That means only Bo Baldwin in the last 50 years has had a better winning percent, and barely. It's Bo Baldwin is a .726. Aaron Best is a .704. If you're calling for him to be on the hot seat, you should stop watching FCS football.
Yeah, Boatman.
I guess I'll take a angle here that can be fun, right? He's not on the hot seat at all whatsoever right now, right? He's not on the hot seat whatsoever right now. He shouldn't be, right? He's deserved that. But I do recall that, going back to 2019, and Kyle, that's probably where I do, and where is time gone, because that seems like yesterday, but here we are, 2022. So the angle I'm going to take with this is he could actually about to be to enter the hot seat again because of the expectation that Eastern fans have put on him in the past and on this program. Eastern has, well, I'm gonna call wins above replace, like it's like a war, right? A war from like Major League Baseball.
Mhm.
The way Eastern continues to win without spending money with crap facilities and a crap stadium is not normal. Like, no offense, Kyler. Like, that's just like Idaho
you're
has
fine.
a crap stadium too, and our facilities are crap compared to what we've seen other teams the Big Sky build. Even at UC Davis, Montana, Montana State, Weber State, we can now point to 4 other schools in this conference that have, top of the line FCS facilities. So the fact that he is able to continue to win and keep doing that, as we have seen money become more important in this sport, and as someone who works in this industry, like, money doesn't cure all, but damn, money sure helps, right? So I don't think he's on the hot seat right now. However, like, if I'm an Aaron Best stan, right? If I think Aaron Best is the best thing since sliced bread, I would be worried about these next couple of years, because what is Eastern going to look like in terms of performance on the field? You can't point to a flashy new facility to help bring recruits in, right? You have to sell recruits on, hey, we win, right? Which is great, but shoot, guys want to go into that Montana locker room and weight room and see that every day and have a two square meals provided to them a day now, especially just in this day and age we're in. So I think Aaron Best is about to enter the hot seat if this season kind of pans out maybe the way I might get at later on the show.
Ooh, that might be. We might have a little post schedule, because I might want to dive a bit more into that, depending on how your picks go, because that could be interesting. I see what you're saying. On my, because I'm doing all mine in Taco Bell hot sauce meters. He's like a verde right now, like not even, it's below mild. Like, this is something you strictly put on for some taste. Like, you're trying to spice up the season a little bit. You do what Boatman did. You put a little verde sauce on it. Like, hey, you know what? Maybe this will add a little flavor to this taco. So, right now has one bad season to point to that says, like, yeah, maybe not. But I see what you're saying. Like, we'll talk about quarterback here, but it's like, he did inherit a really good quarterback room. They recently announced their starter. There are some differing opinions on that. So, maybe he does find himself more into the mild to the hot sauce area in the off season. But for right now, yeah, it's verde sauce. He's basically sitting on the edge of that throne. Like, he's not all the way reclined back in it, but he's kind of like, sitting on the edge of it. Maybe like, I don't even know. Just not all the way in the chair, but he's basically, I'd say, the second or third safest coach in the Big Sky. Like, he could almost lose every game this year, and he's not getting fired. He's built up at least that kind of rapport. They could go 0-11. He's still getting another season out of it. So, not a lot of guys can say that unless you had a really, really bad program. Cool. So let's talk about transfers. Transfers in. We've talked about it when we were covering Idaho. They got an Idaho offensive lineman, Seth Carnahan. So he's coming over from the old Vandals. He was a starter there, played in 27 games. They also got linebacker Layman Toure from Nevada. This is a bigger one. He played 32 games for the Wolfpack, had 71 tackles. He was a former 3-star recruit, had FBS offers, 15 offers total, 9 of which were of the FBS. None of them were Power 5, though. The notable other offers he got: San Diego State, Mountain West Power, Colorado State, up-and-coming Mountain West team, Wyoming, bottom dweller, UNLV, even a bigger bottom dweller, Sac State in northern Colorado. So a guy who this is like Sac State. It would have been Troy Taylor's like first or second class. So a guy who's proven he has an eye for talent. And then he did what a lot of guys do. He probably went to Nevada, realized, maybe the bright and shining lights of G5 football isn't quite what I'm looking for, and ended up following suit over to the old FCS. So a big name there. Then you have a guy, Jaden Banks from Rice. And then you have a linebacker, Sherwin King from Fresno State. He actually played DB when he was recruited and started as a DB at Fresno State, and has since moved to linebacker, which isn't that uncommon in the college football ranks, actually. So pretty good get. He's played in 19 games, but only 3 of those were starts. But once again, Fresno State the last couple of years has been a decent Power 5 team. So, like, a guy who started 3 games at Fresno State, he's a noticeable transfer in, especially for a program that has really bolstered their defense as of late. And then they have one last one, DB Alfonsi Owak, Oywak. He played for Washington State in 2 games last year. He's a freshman. He did have 8 offers, all of which were FBS. 3 were Power 5. But he did also get offers to Arizona, Oregon State, Boise State, and Nevada. And then Eastern, no transfers out. Everybody stayed.
What about Chris Ojo? How long is he? When did he leave?
Last year. He
Okay.
was, went down to New Mexico.
I was watching that game last night. That's why I just popped in my head. No, I was thinking about that.
He's one of their best players.
Yeah.
And they're still not good. I actually watched in that game. Same thing. I was like, I heard his name and I was like, wait, that's Eastern. But then I was like, watching them, like, wow, the Aggies aren't actually as bad as I remember them being. And then Nevada found their stride there late. And I was like, nah.
Hey, give him time. Hey, future Conference USA member, New Mexico State,
True. But Nevada also lost like half of its team and its coaching staff to Colorado State.
They got a new coach. They got a new coach though. They got Jerry Kill.
Yeah.
Northern Illinois legend Jerry Kill. He's back on the sidelines.
Yeah,
hey,
at Minnesota too.
As much as I hate Las Cruces, I got a soft place in my heart for the Aggies after being tethered to them for the best part of 25 years. So,
yeah, we've covered that before. The Aggies are like a quasi star-crossed lover for Idaho fans.
Yeah,
they're kind of like alternate Idaho. Like we look at them in the FBS and they go, "Oh, that could have been us." But
anyway,
we've had some weird games. We've played them twice in a season, twice. Like it's fun. Anyways, back to Eastern. No transfers out. So any of these transfers in, I mean, pique your guys' interest.
Is Kyler?
Yeah,
let's let Kyler pique his interest. He's got the most importance in these.
Well, the good news is, like you just mentioned it, Eastern Washington doesn't really ever have too many transfers out, right? Because what we're doing as a program is we do it the correct way. And that's what makes Eastern Washington so much more successful than other teams that have resources, right? When you come to Eastern, you typically stay. Even, Cooper Kupp, he stayed. There's very few that end up transferring out, maybe one a year, and that's on a bad year. But, yeah, we typically get a hold all of our talent in, and then the transfers we went after, we didn't go after just people that have no experience. We went after a lot of, actual players who can make immediate impacts. The big one I'm really excited about is Alfonso from, Washington State. We've seen him torch it up in practice already. Now, our DB room is already extremely deep. So it was one of those things. I'm like, I don't even know if we'll end up seeing him on the field, even if he is competitive. It looks like he has a chance to be, at least in a rotation. The linebacker position, we needed a lot too. So it was nice to see a transfer come in. Now he seems a little bit undersized. So we'll see. But we were an undersized linebacking group last year anyway. But overall, I mean, we're only picking, players that have the skill set to probably compete for a starting position at Eastern. Will some of them win them? Probably. Will some of them lose them? Probably. But I like the transfer class that we actually brought in this year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say so far, you guys are probably my favorite transfer in class. I mean, Idaho had a pretty good one too, but
I guess question for Kyler.
3 guys. You guys got 4 solid dudes as well. So
yeah. I guess my question for Kyler, real quick, Chris, is linebacker wise, Kyler, what do we think of these guys versus the linebackers Idaho brought in? Just because those Idaho guys are being raved about pretty heavy, I guess. So like, where do you think? I know your thoughts on them. You're high on those guys. Where do you think these guys maybe stand?
If I had to pick, which class I prefer on just that positions group, the Idaho linebacking group that you guys brought in, definitely above what we brought in. The good news though is, at least for us, we needed that. We needed at least that position group. We lost pretty much all the linebackers last year. We bring in almost everyone else across the defense. So just having some kids that have actual experience at the P5 or not P5 level, but at the FBS level with actual play time, I'll take it. They're at least, and some of these guys, like I said, may not even win the starting role at Eastern. But the good news is they're at least going to get in some type of positions battle. But yeah, if you were asking me, would I rather
I
take
was
that
just
Notre
curious.
Dame kid or one of these guys? I mean, give me the Notre Dame kid.
But
I'm happy.
how far off do you think that they might that pique your happiness?
Okay, so if I would have graded that linebacking group that Idaho brought in as an A, because that's what I kind of graded as, I'll grade this as a B minus.
Okay.
But I think we still have the best linebacking transfer group that we brought in, right? I would say Montana has the best linebacking room. Montana State, Idaho, Weber, they're all solid. But in terms of transfers bringing in one position group, yeah, I mean, we're probably the second best in the Big Sky in transfers brought in for the linebacking group, but just that gap is still significant from what Idaho brought in.
Right. Just trying. I don't know what it is about the Vandals. You talk about the linebackers. That's the only thing they can ever do is produce linebackers. They can't produce offensive linemen to save their lives, but linebackers,
they're studs, though.
I don't know what it is.
It goes back to even being in the FBS. Like, we've always had good linebackers, and that's
I don't know why.
Why?
Like, I don't know why.
We should have quarterbacks. They get to throw in a dome, but no, we get linebackers.
I like this group though. I like the experience. Right. Anytime you can get a lot of guys that have played a lot of ball in your room, great. Like, especially if they match you culturally and they match with what you're trying to do internally and they understand their role, fantastic. Then that's even a double win. Like here at WVU brought in like a transfer from North Dakota State is Jasir Cox. They brought in a kid from James Madison who played 4 years at DB, and they brought in another kid from Colorado State. All really experienced guys who played a lot of ball. And I've heard nothing but good. I'm not trying to. I just kind of apples to apples, kind of. They played a lot of ball and they've looked good because they've seen a lot of stuff. So that's what I see with this group, right?
Yeah.
Just anytime you get guys who have played, 27 games, 32 games, 19 games, a young guy with a lot of talent, that's a win. And you do talk about, right, like, linebackers where you guys have lost a lot the last 2 years. Even though he didn't transfer out last year, right? Chris Ojo is someone who was really good a couple years ago. Ty Graham's a really good friend of mine. So I know losing Ty Graham's big, and also in the DB losing Callan Kreiner, right? You talk about guys who are senior leadership experience, guys who've seen a lot of football, experienced a lot of stuff. It's good that you can maybe replace them with guys internally and also maybe guys externally who have that experience.
Yep, good old Disco Kreiner. But I do love the Torre signing. I think he's going to be. I mean, 32 games, and he's only a junior. That's the other thing. Like, I think all these guys, except maybe King and Carnahan, are they're going to be back.
Yeah.
Like Jaden Banks, I believe, was a freshman. We know Afonso is a freshman. So it's like most of these guys are young. There's only one dude who's coming in for 1 year. Like, these are guys who are going to play a lot for Eastern.
Jaden Banks is a senior.
Is he? So is he transferring?
So he's a senior from Rice,
and just never played at Rice.
Yeah, he actually had I think 4 games, not much. In terms of the transfers, him and the WSU kid have the least amount of playing time.
But the WSU kid was a true freshman.
He was a true freshman. He still had played in 3 games or something like that. And I believe in the first practice when we were doing a full scrimmage, I mean, he was just lighting up the field. In an already very deep DB room. So we'll just see if he can, where he falls on that roster spot.
Yeah. Do you know why he wanted to leave Wazoo after just a year?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I know he got a little bit buried in the depth chart after, he thought he was performing pretty well. So I don't know if that's it, but I mean, for the DB room, we've had Eli Doyle, he came from ASU, who actually had starts there for some reason. We're attracting so many DBs now, and I don't know what the reason is. It's not just we're getting wide receivers anymore. We're getting a lot of DBs through the portal and some actually really talented guys.
Yeah, my guess is he would have been a Rolo recruit, so maybe it was just but
it's half of that's the same staff. So it's it's not like an external. But
wasn't the
staff,
DB coaches one of the guys who did the whole walkout?
I can't remember. You just never know.
You were in the locker room. Don't you usually commit to your position coach like that?
No. A lot of times it's recruited by area. So for example, when I was there, Luther would go recruit Utah, right? No matter who they are, Yeah. And it's like an area combined with and then the position coach is also recruiting for one position, but then they're also the main contact for an area. It's kind of both, right? St.
I was just
would
wondering, like,
recruit
if your
Washington.
position coach is who maybe signed you and then they leave, and then you're like,
Yeah.
I'll sit it out and see how this goes. And maybe you're just one of the few guys that just like didn't like how Dickert viewed the defense or whatever, or the new guy he brought in, and you're like, yeah, I'll go to
Wasn't
Eastern.
Dickert the D coordinator?
Might have been. But
yeah. Anyway, sorry. I'm just curious.
Let's move on to other impact players. Kyler, I'm gonna lean on you for this because, like, whoever I'm gonna name, you probably have like 4 other people. So, like, who are the players that people are watching this that maybe aren't Eastern fans or maybe more casual Eastern fans? Give me like a couple like will be our household names, and then maybe like 1 or 2 that by the end of the season people will know and be getting those votes for all conference type nods.
Well, like just in the DB room alone, Anthony Smith, he's been a nightmare. He's a beast. Trey we've heard him for a very long time. Darian Sampson, Marlon Jones Jr. These are all guys who are going to get playing time at the DB position. Eli Doyle. I mean, so those are just our DBs who are going to see significant play time in a rotation. But then, like, of course, our other playmakers, the offensive line has always been a key factor for Eastern. So, yes, we lost, our best offensive lineman, but that whole group is going to be a key factor in returning. We return most everyone else. And then for the wide receivers, right? You could probably go in, let's see here. Which one do I want to mention? Because there's 2 that are, all-American Big Sky. I only want to mention one. Let's see.
I like Efton. We can start with Efton.
I'm not going to say Efton because I think that's a cheat code because everyone already knows him. And I'm not even going to say, let's see, Anthony. Let's go Anthony Stell Jr. because Freddie Roberson and Efton are probably what everyone knows of, right? They're going to make a giant impact. I'm going to go with Anthony Stell Jr. He's a fast kid out of Rainier Beach. He's seen some playing time. He's only 5'10", 180. He's going to be our very speedy, just go and do a streak and, good luck trying to guard him. But I don't know. We still have so much talent on this team. I actually feel bad only saying a few names. It's a very talented roster.
Okay. And so are any of those the guys you think that people haven't heard of yet and that they might?
Yeah, I was trying to think of, just names that maybe people haven't heard of. Now, there is another wide receiver who probably no one has heard of right now.
Because you were high on Efton. That's why I'm kind of asking. Is I remember, like, in the Big Sky Podcast Network chat, you were trying to tell all of us, like, hey, Efton Chisholm's the next guy. Efton Chisholm's the next guy. And
He's the
okay,
next
Kyler,
guy.
We get it. You're like, there's a recruit you're pretty high on. And then you were right. Like, in a year's time, he is a household name to most, diehard Big Sky people. They know
the 2 people the 3 wide receivers that I would say are not a household name right now, but in the next few seasons are going to be Nolan Ulm. He's 6'2", 190 out of BC. He's one of Canada's best kind of recruits that we got. He's solid. There's a freshman who has a very Limu Jones type of physique. He's 6'5", 190 about, really quick. He's a freshman. I wouldn't be surprised to see him get some, snaps this year. Malachi Roberson, you're probably going to hear of him a little bit this year too. So, yeah, I mean, we have no lack of talent on the wide receiver room, DB room, offensive line. Yeah. The more I dive into the roster, the more I like us this year than I did in the offseason.
That's good because I know you were a little harsh on yourself.
It's still the same win percentage, but I think some of the games are going to be closer than what I anticipated.
Cool. Well, let's get into some of the headlines, our favorite little thing where I'm going to give you a headline. You guys are going to tell me what you think the story's about, and then I'm going to self-correct you on what I meant by it. Maybe we get 2 conversations out of 1 piece of content. They will never be able to replace a Peyton Award winner. Obviously, that's Eric Barriere. Boatman, what do you think this means?
I think that it means that it's hard to replace that kind of talent, someone who had that big of an imprint on your program for that long. It's not just how good he was, it's just how consistent he was and his longevity and, his leadership as well. I think that's actually probably the biggest loss is his leadership and the way guys looked up to him and consistency at the toughest position to play in this game.
Yeah. Kyler, this is actually your headline. I asked you for Eastern headlines, and you came up with this one. So What were you kind of thinking with it?
Well, before I give you that, let's just do a little fun story. Before Eric Barriere made his first start at Eastern Washington, I had a post on FCS Fans Nation that I said, everyone be on the lookout for this kid. He's arguably the most talented quarterback we have ever had. Now I don't know if he's going to end up having a Vernon Adams type of career, but he's the most talented quarterback we've ever had. So watch out for big things. And then he ends up finishing third all-time FCS in career yards. He was really only a starter for 2.5 seasons at Eastern Washington, but it felt like 5 years just because of how the COVID year played out. But yeah, the reason why I did this trolling one is because this seems to be the narrative across the nation, right? Oh my God, Eastern Washington, they're losing, a Walter Payton Award winner. They're going to just be absolute trash. You have to go back and look at 20 seasons before you can find Eastern Washington with a quarterback that didn't finish in the top 5 of, the nation. And that quarterback that didn't finish in the top 5 that year was Bo Levi Mitchell, and we won the national title. That's the only year we had a quarterback not really within the top 5, top 10 in terms of seasonal stats, and we still won a national title. We have, 4 Walter Payton Award winners now. So this was more just trolling, going, trust the process. You literally have to go back 30 years before you find an Eastern Washington quarterback that was not some type of all-conference, all-American, right? Bo Levi had one bad season. They still won a national title. He won the Walter Payton the next year. So it's not like he had a bad career. That seems to be a position that we replace extremely well. And we recruit a lot of guys who don't get a lot of offers, right? Gage Gruber was a walk-on. No one wanted him. He ended up setting the single season for passing yards in a season at like 5,100. I don't know why we continue to find these guys, or just why maybe some of these guys are under-recruited, but the QB room, it seems to be fine. We don't have an Eric Barriere on the roster. We've got a couple dudes who will do just fine.
So I have a quick question. What is Eric Barriere doing at the moment?
He was in the USFL.
He got signed by the Broncos for minicamp, right?
For minicamp.
Back in the spring.
Yep. And then he was, forgot what.
Because he came up,
Panthers?
I believe it was the Vanderbilt Hawaii game last night. They were talking about it.
Okay.
Because Ian Shoemaker's the OC at Hawaii.
Yep. That makes sense. I was really confused. I'm like, because they're like, oh yeah, Walter Payton Award winner, which is basically that piqued my, because I was kind of quasi watching that game.
Yeah.
Ian Shoemaker's the OC at Hawaii.
Yeah, and all of a sudden they're like, yeah, and he's been doing something like the USFL or CFL, but he should get some NFL looks. But
I'm
Eric
pretty
Barriere,
sure this
Eastern Washington Eagles. I'm like, wait, that's who they're talking about? What does Barriere have to do with Hawaii?
Well,
that makes sense. Ian Shoemaker.
I'm pretty sure he has a contract with the CFL.
That's what I heard. Somebody owns his rights or something.
Someone owns his rights if he decides to go there.
Be interested to see if he plays in the XFL coming up, right? Seattle has a team starting back up again. So
yeah, he didn't get a lot of opportunity in the USFL, but I mean, in his second throw, he threw a touchdown. So I mean, he had the talent, and then all of a sudden they just stopped using him again after his touchdown. I was like, well, what the hell? And the whole page on the Panthers because I think he's Michigan Panthers, something like that. Everyone was like, no, we want Eric Barriere in, and they just wouldn't put him in after that. I don't know why.
That sucks. Case Cookis tore it up, so it's like you can imagine what Barriere could have done.
It's so weird just thinking about the transition from this level to the next level and just what coaches look for, right? And it's just like, well, how does so and so never get a look? I'm not trying to. It's just I just find it bizarre. It's just it's like a secret sauce to a chili recipe. It's like a secret chili recipe that they only seem to understand, and I'm always like, I always feel like the everyday fan is like, well, what am I missing? And I always feel like that, right? Like what? And I don't know why, right? Because you say he did well in the USFL. Maybe that's what he just finds his lane is the XFL, CFL, and just flourishes Vernon Adams is done and Bo Levi Mitchell's done.
Yeah, they're not mad with their $1 million contracts. It's fine.
Yeah. So I did want to kind of talk about this a little bit of the quarterback room. Gunnar Talkington was named the starting quarterback.
Yep.
Once again, Kyler kind of being my Eastern expert. I do remember 2019. It feels like yesterday, but it was forever ago, as Boatman did point out to us. You were really high on another quarterback on the roster, Trey Turner.
Yeah.
What's kind of happened to Trey? Is he just not developed, or do you think he might still get a shot if Talkington? Was he even is he going to be the backup? It's been Barriere for so long. I just assumed Trey was the 2, and it appears Talkington was definitely the 2.
Yeah,
which makes sense. He did get some time against Idaho last year.
Talkington's has been the 2 for ever since Eric Barriere took the reins in 2018 when Gage got injured. Turner was a solid 3, but there's been something, and I don't know what it is. He hasn't developed. Every now and then, we have a quarterback who doesn't work out, even under the Baldwin days. Luckily, we have always a few more that work out. But yeah, he just hasn't really put it together. And of course, we haven't seen him in real game time play. Some QBs are better in game performance than they are in practice. Some are opposite. Like Vernon Adams, there's a reason why we had a two split QB system that year. He was performing well in the games. The other QBs, from at least rumors that I've heard, he was outperforming them in practice. So, who do you trust? I'm not sure. But yeah, Trey Turner, it doesn't seem like he has developed to make that next step forward. I would assume he's probably the 3rd, option this year. We have a few dudes, but yeah, Talkington's definitely number 1 to start the season. We'll see how it goes.
Sounds good. Who is Talkington a senior or junior?
Talkington is like a 8th year senior. He's he's like a cookie.
So 2023 we'll be covering this subject again of Eastern Washington having a new quarterback. You think it's somebody they're going to have to recruit for? Or do you think there is somebody on the roster that can just take over the helm?
Yeah,
I know we're previewing 2022, not 2023, but might as well look. People want to know, I'm sure.
Yeah, there's 2 dudes who have everything we're probably going to look for, but the one that's making some rounds is a redshirt freshman, Kikoa. So we picked up him out of Spanaway. He went to Bethel High School. He was a solid quarterback, very versatile. I think he ran track as well, so he's a nice dual threat. Typical Eastern size, about 6 foot, 190, 200. But he's a redshirt freshman, and I guess everything that I've seen from him this year, he's killing it in camp. He's killing it in scrimmages. I didn't see what he did this last weekend for the scrimmage, but the first scrimmage, I mean, he was performing really well. I don't remember if it was 8 for 13. He doesn't make a lot of mistakes. But then you have Simon Burkett too. He's solid. Got a big arm, 6'3", more of a quarterback frame. So yeah, I mean, I don't think the talent is really gone at Eastern Washington in the quarterback room. I think we have some solid options in the next few years, but we'll most likely grab a very good quarterback in the recruiting cycle. We almost had the Gatorade Player of the Year who, was a part of a national championship team. And all of a sudden that game where he beat the 7A champs out of Georgia or Alabama, I forgot which one, then everyone wanted him. And he was locked in for us, Washington Gatorade Player of the Year. Then he ended up going to Fresno with one of our coaches. But we had him. He was committed. So we'll find another quarterback. I'm not too worried about that.
For those watchers, you've already noticed, for listeners, Alex Boatman has, I don't even know, gone MIA. We already heard Talkington, and he went to go watch film. So hopefully he gets back before we get to the preview. If not, we do have one more headline to talk about. Unfamiliar territory. So I want you to run with this where you will, and then I'm going to kind of bring it back in.
Is this... Gosh, those white jerseys look so good. Sorry.
Better than these ones for sure.
Yeah, I like those ones. I'm glad we're bringing it back to the Eastern.
Washington is too much for the front.
Too much. It's too long. Unfamiliar territory. Maybe this is just, I would say it's, not having a QB, a returning All-American QB, but at the same time, we go through this all the time.
I'd say that's familiar territory.
Yeah, it's actually familiar territory. Maybe not being ranked in the top 10 to start a year.
Right? That's a little closer. So it's kind of a two-parter. One is I kind of want to. Well, it's actually like a three-parter. There's 3 questions I want to answer with this. Is one, Eastern is the first team, and obviously it's because it plays into the top 25 that gets ranked in the top 25. But if you're looking at the top 25, they're the 4th highest ranked team in the top. No, 3rd, 4th high. Yeah, because Montana State, SAC, Eastern.
Yeah. But
in the Big Sky, because for those who don't know, we're doing our previews from back to front. They got picked behind a bunch of teams that they are ranked by the top 25 ahead of, which in my own, that's where I'm like, how can the Big Sky poll be so much, because they're not the only one. Weber State does it as well, where they're ranked ahead of. No, that's correct. UC Davis is ranked something. It gets weird, and that's where I'm like, how is Eastern ranked this low in the Big Sky polls, but ranked that high in the top 25, which I thought was weird.
I think that's a very easy one. Out of all Big Sky teams in the national news and presence, sure, Montana for sure, right? They're a bigger brand. You could say Montana State maybe this year is a bigger national brand, but I would still probably say there's a majority of voters out there in the national media who probably still know of Eastern Washington as a bigger football college brand than Montana State.
So you think that's a little bit more of voter ignorance? Like,
I think it's a little bit of voter ignorance in the sense where we've at least heard of Eastern Washington. All of last year they were a top 4 team. They were a solid top 8 team. They probably aren't aware of what maybe some of the other teams return, or maybe just the Big Sky media is also a little ignorant, thinking Eastern Washington lost all of their pieces when maybe they didn't. There's probably a mixture of the two that maybe you need to pull it apart and join forces. And maybe if you combine both of them, that's where you're actually going to get the true opinion of where they're most likely at. So I would say it's a little bit of an ignorance on both sides.
Yeah. Boatman's back. Boatman, we're kind of talking how this is kind of just a weird spot where we're working, back to front in terms of the Big Sky previews. Eastern Washington gets picked 6th in the Big Sky poll, but they're the 4th highest rated team in the top 25, ahead of UC Davis and Weber, who are ahead of them in the Big Sky poll. So we're kind of trying to work out where do we actually think Eastern is and who's closer, the national voters or the Big Sky media poll?
I think if you kind of break it out into tiers, right? I think if you do a tier of UC Davis, Weber, and Eastern, it's a pretty solid tier. It's probably gonna be pretty accurate. Maybe even Sac State in that tier, in my opinion, right? How they fit, I think they might be putting a national poll based off of, or you're doing your preseason ranking based off of where you think they're gonna finish, and I think it's a lot schedule based. You look at Eastern schedule, they have to play both Montanas, they have to play Weber, they have to play Sac State. That is a tough schedule they have to play. They have to play at Idaho, who Aaron Bess has failed to beat in Moscow, right? So if you're trying to do a preseason ranking in the Big Sky based off of where you think they're going to finish, you can easily pick out, like comfortably, you're looking at teams that they're better than comfortably on this schedule in terms of good chances to win. I'm going to say Northern Colorado. I'm going to say Portland State, Cal Poly. You can say Idaho, but they haven't beat Idaho in Moscow since they've been back from the Big Sky. So, when you start looking at it, you go, okay, well, maybe I see why that's the case. Like Eastern might be I think preseason top 25 is based off of who's the better team versus Big Sky media poll. Preseason ranking is based off of where you think they're it's a predictive on where you think they're going to finish versus the top 20. Top 25. Yeah. Top 25 is a snapshot in a vacuum of where you think that team is in terms of best teams in the country, right?
Yeah.
That's what that is. So that's why I think you see the difference.
Cool. Then my kind of second part of this unfamiliar territory is, Eastern Washington went on a run there where they were winning Big Sky championships left, right, and center. Smidge bit of a drought now. What has it been? Is it 2 or 3 seasons?
2018 was the last
2018. One. So for them, that's what I was saying. It's also kind of unfamiliar territory. So I want to kind of know, like, what does Eastern need to do to get back up top? I mean, or is it just strictly that Eastern benefited a little bit in the 2010s from not having a ton of competition? I mean, they had paper strong Montana State teams that, were really tough until they got hit in the face and then they fell apart. But really, nobody significantly challenged Eastern in the 2010s. You think it's just more the Big Sky as a whole has elevated and it has more teams challenging Eastern now? Or is it an Eastern thing where, no, they still could, should, and will be top of this conference, and they just need new DBs or better offensive line, more running backs? Like, what's it going to take for Eastern to get back to winning conference titles, Kyler?
I mean, I would say it's actually a mixture of both. The Big Sky was definitely not as good as it is right now in the 2010s, but also Eastern Washington for most of the 2010s was a top 3 team nationwide. So even if, we had the Montanas at right now, where the Montana States is right now, back in those times, probably those Eastern Washington teams still probably win. So I do think it's a mix of the Big Sky wasn't as strong as it is now since 2018. The Big Sky's definitely improved. But Eastern Washington probably has regressed a little bit. So, I mean, like I said earlier, Aaron Best's worst season in since he's taken over Eastern Washington in conference is 6-2. So realistically, there is a very close loss that, every single year we have a very close loss to a team that is by 1 point, 2 points that we probably should have beat. So, I mean, we're still only 30 seconds away in a majority of these seasons from getting another Big Sky title. So I don't think the drop off has been as drastic as like people are really referring to, going, man, they haven't won a title since 2018. Nope, we were 10 seconds away from winning one last year. We were 10 seconds away from winning one the year before. It is what it is. But the Big Sky has definitely improved overall.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, you kind of touched on it there. Sorry, Boatman, do you have any take?
No, I was just going to say that I do think it's like probably 70-30. The Big Sky's gotten better and Eastern's regressed. I think it's like Eastern's taking like a tiny step back, but I think the Big Sky's taking like a big step forward since pretty much Idaho's been in the conference, right? Like I remember that was like all the take of the Idaho fans, like in 2016, this announced like, oh, hey, it's only Eastern running through the Big Sky. The Montanas are down. No one else is really good. And all of a sudden, like we get in and it's like, well, East Davis has gotten good. Weber's has gotten better and is now winning conference titles. Jeff Choate goes to Montana State and turns them into, a team that's gone into the playoffs a couple times in a row. Bobby Houck went back to Montana. You know what I mean? Just like pretty much it's like that. I remember that. Those were the takes. It's like, hey, the Big Sky's not that good. And then Idaho, like I'm not trying to compare it, but I feel like that's just kind of when things kind of shifted, is that late teens, the last 5 years when, teams just kind of really took a step forward. And I think Eastern's been the most consistent team in the Big Sky still over that stretch.
Yeah. All right. So you kind of touched on it. Moving into kind of conference schedules, right? Let's roll through. Let's find a win-loss record for the Eastern Washington Eagles here. Week 1, they host Eddie George and Tennessee State. Alex, who are you taking in this?
Give me an Eastern win.
Eastern win. I'm going to give it an Eastern win as well. But I will say for any Eastern fans out there that don't follow the FCS as a whole, don't expect Tennessee State to be a total walkover, cakeover FCS game. Eddie George had a lot of good things happening. He's only in year 2. Tennessee State is making strides. They're no Jackson State, that's for sure. But, it's a team that might be able to hang in there for a quarter and a half, maybe even have it tight at halftime. I don't think Eastern's going to struggle putting it away, but I would just say, if you walk away from this game and you're kind of like, ooh, I don't really like how our year's looking, Tennessee State gave us problems. Tennessee State is a team that might be able to give you some problems. They shouldn't beat you, but, I guess don't think this is a total cakewalk FCS opponent, in my opinion. But I'm giving Eastern the win. Kyler?
Yeah, if it was a few years ago, definitely Tennessee State is not the same one that Eddie George is recruiting and bringing in talent. Arguably, this is going to be one of the more talented teams we see all year. And you're looking at the schedule. There's a lot of really good players and teams on this schedule. I think this is going to be a very close game to the end. I don't think Eastern walks away with it. I think across the board, we're probably going to win. But yeah, this is not the Tennessee State of the past. My guess is they're going to probably win the OVC or be the top 2 in the OVC, potentially get a playoff bid. It depends on how the rest of their season goes out. But this is a tough first game, especially for our quarterback, because their D-line is huge. And if our O-line cannot, create some space for our quarterback to, gain some confidence in there, it could be a very long, low-scoring, long night for, Eastern Washington. But I'll give us the win. But Tennessee State's solid.
It's just one of those games where as an Eastern fan, you're excited you got a home game, but, it's before the students are on campus. It's just kind of one where you wish that was either week 3 and or better yet, week 1, you could make a trip down to Nashville, Tennessee instead.
No, I'm glad it's at Eastern.
You're glad it's at home?
Yeah.
Me as the neutral, I'm like, man, I might have gone and watched them play in Nashville, hang out with Colby
No,
Peterson
thanks.
of Weaver State Weekly.
We travel way too much. I'm glad it's home.
True. Speaking of traveling way too much, the next week you're playing the old Oregon Web feet of Eugene. Boatman?
Yeah, Oregon win. Bo Nix. If anyone isn't familiar, right? People go, Bo Nix just transferred from Auburn to Oregon. Crappy situation at Auburn. I don't know how familiar you guys are with what's gone down in Auburn in the last.
Very familiar. And Bo Nix. I was at Bo Nix's first college
Yeah,
start
against Oregon
the
in
University of
Dallas.
Oregon.
So, not to sidetrack, but so Auburn's AD just resigned immediately after his
Alan
contract is
Green.
supposed to run out at the end of this month. Tennessee's AD tweeted out yesterday going, hey, happy you got out of that crappy situation. They treated you terribly. So Auburn's a dumpster fire. Brian Harsin has allegations. Love to see that for Brian Harsin, the fact that he blocks me on Twitter. So I think maybe the pace of play and what the Pac-12 does, I think, is going to suit Bo Nix more. And Vegas does have him pretty high up in Heisman odds, just FYI.
Yeah.
So Oregon, big.
Yeah, this one's weird just because, people that aren't familiar with Bo Nix, the guy has a picture of, like, when he was a kid and Cam Newton won the national title or whatever. He was, like, front row, has a picture of, like, Cam Newton scored a touchdown and it was right in front of him. He's, like, patting his shoulder. The kid grew up an Auburn fan. And he got his start as a freshman, looked good, was good, and then Auburn just is like, but instead of dumpster fire. So this is like an Oregon team that actually was very bad at quarterback last year for Oregon standards and still had a pretty good season. They have a good quarterback now, but new coaches, defensive coach coming in from Georgia.
Dan Lanning. Yeah.
Yeah. This also comes the week after they have to play Georgia down in Atlanta. So they could be a little beat up. Eastern has a history of being frisky against the FBS, but I am going to take the Ducks on this one.
Yeah. Oregon wins by a hefty amount. It is what it is. We've been very competitive with the majority of the Pac-12 teams we played, even the good ones, bowl caliber ones. We've beaten them. We've gone down to the wire. Last time we played Oregon, Cooper Kupp had 226 yards, 3 touchdowns, and that was against Vernon Adams. This is not going to be one of those games that's very competitive, though. So, yeah, Oregon, big.
Yeah. So real quick, percentage chance they can beat Oregon. We're staying with this segment.
1.
I'll go 2.
I'll go 3. Speaking of 3, week 3, it's the bye week. Apparently, some people aren't catching on. You are supposed to like and subscribe to this if you're on YouTube, or leave it a 5-star rating. As bad as Eastern Washington is going to smoke the bye week in week 3. They're going to absolutely obliterate them. It's not even going to be close. It's going to be over before it even started, just like you and the subscription and like button. So do that. Week 4, no easy tasks headed into conference play. You guys get a host, at least. Number 4, Montana State, runner-up at Frisco, to open up conference play. Alex?
I mean, I have to go with the Bobcats. I do. They're a top 5 team nationally. They beat Eastern at home last year. They made that quarterback change. Remember that kid's electric that took over for them late in the year. I'm blanking on his name right now.
Tommy.
Yeah, my buddy lives in Bozeman. He loves that guy. So I go with the Bobcats. I just have to go with the Bobcats. I mean, they will be favored, and rightly so.
I might get a little frisky here. I think it's going to be a really good game. Montana State is coming. Like I said, Eastern will have a bye week here to rest up from Oregon. Montana State is coming immediately after playing the Oregon State Beavers, a game in which I would imagine most Bobcat fans are going to think it's one of the better shots they've had against an FBS team in recent history. I know they just played Wyoming, but more than they had against like Texas Tech, etc. I could see them maybe not just rolling over in that game, and it might lead to some issues. I think they're going to be a really good team, but I think maybe to open conference play after a game like that, if Gunnar Talkington is remotely as good or average as an Eastern quarterback, I actually think Eastern can win this game. So I'll actually take the Eagles here.
Yeah, this all depends on Afonso. I really do believe that, because he ran all over Eastern last year. That was the only really bad portion of our defense. It was, stopping the run. Other than that, they lost Lance McCutcheon, who was their only good offensive weapon outside of Afonso last year. That is my honest assessment. He caught a lot of 50-50 balls that he's even doing in this preseason, showing you he's an absolute beast. The quarterback was not throwing the ball well last year, even Tommy Malott. I saw him live, a lot of 50-50 balls. I think with more film on him, he's probably going to be easier to stop, actually. And I think he may be hesitant after his injury. So here's my take. Afonso is month to month. If Afonso is healthy and playing, I would probably lean on Montana State winning. If he's not healthy and he's still not playing, I actually really like Eastern Washington's odds in a very close game, just like last year. So I'm hoping he doesn't play. So I'm going to say he's not playing. He starts the week after, and Eastern gets a win.
Okay, perfect. Then the next week, you guys are going down to Gainesville to play Florida. Boatman?
If you guys think Oregon's fast, just wait till you go to the Swamp, man. This is the ex-Jim McElwain Bowl, right? So that's a long trip, long flight. I mean, it's the Gators, it's the Swamp. I know they're down, but yeah, still the Gators.
So Boatman going with a 3-game losing streak here for
I told you
Washington.
This is pairing with my future hot seat prediction earlier in the show. I was telling you.
Yeah. I do think that Eastern doesn't really hang in this game. They've already played Oregon. They're going to be coming off what I just said was a tough fought game against Montana State. I think this is a go down there, collect a paycheck, and worry about the gauntlet of a conference schedule you also have coming up. So I think big loss for the Eagles.
Yeah, I actually think we play a little bit better than versus Oregon. But even this one, I gave us a 1% chance, and even that's being a little gifty for beating Oregon. We don't have more than a 2% chance to beat Florida. I'm glad we're playing them the first week of October instead of, in September where it's still extremely hot and humid. But yeah, this is not going to be a win. Florida rolls.
No, it's still going to be hot and humid.
Yeah,
but definitely better than playing in the South the first week of Labor Day.
We played in South Alabama in 2017 at the end of September, like the last weekend, Kyler. Oh my dear Lord, Mobile!
Yeah.
That was
I live in the South.
I know
so
you do, man. I'm saying, but those kids, you step off that plane, you're like, what the hell am I stepping into?
Yeah, the good news is every single year we've played in extreme humidity. We've been to Texas, Alabama, New York, all these other places, all recent. And we're going to Louisiana the year after. So this is just something for us. I'd rather play in October than September in the South. I'll just say that though.
But it is called the Swamp for a reason. I think it's always a little swampy. At week 6, you're traveling to number 20 Weber State Wildcats. Boatman. I keep saying we and then starting with Boatman, which is hilarious. But
this one's tough to me. Like these next two to me are really, really tough. I just get the feeling that I haven't gone 0-4 to start off, right? Like that's where I'm sitting at.
You're 1-4. You haven't beaten Tennessee State.
Oh, you're right. 1-3. We're sitting at 1-3 right now. Are they going to get way? Am I high on Weber or am I down on Weber? These next two teams, guys, I'm going to ask the group, what is everyone's opinions on Weber? Because that's a team that I was higher on last year, and they were disappointing, but they still did beat Eastern on the red. So that's why I'm just conflicted. And
quick take before we cover them on Tuesday. About where they were last year,
and that's what makes it tough, and that's what I was leaning towards. I'll give Eastern the win because Weber stole one from them last year there in Cheney. So I'm going to give Eastern a win.
You're going to give Eastern a win against Weber? Here's the deal. Weber is a tough matchup. However, week 5, Weber is on a bye. Weber State, for whatever reason, is notoriously maybe the only team in Division I football that is terrible after a bye week. Like almost every weird, funky loss they've had in the Jay Hill era is after a bye week. It's like they don't do any game planning during that bye week, and everyone just comes back to practice rusty after eating a bunch of pizza and popcorn. I think Eastern beats Weber, and I actually think it could be not even that close because, like I said, if you look historically under Jay Hill, Weber has absolutely had demons after bye weeks. Tyler?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Weber State. It seems like Jay Hill out of any coach, I don't know why, out of any coach in the Big Sky, Jay Hill does an extremely good job against Eastern Washington, and I have no reason why that is. Weber State, I think, is also better than they were last year. They had a brutal schedule, and they're decimated by injuries, and they were still only a down loss from Portland State away from being in the playoffs. I mean, that's all it was. So they're still a playoff caliber team. I actually rank them higher than Eastern Washington in my preseason polls. I think Weber State is going to get the win here.
Yeah. Next up, they host number 7 Sac State, Boatman.
Again, this is one that I just torment with because I know, Chris, you're extremely down on Sac State at all times, like at all times.
I'm less down on them this year. They're starting to prove that maybe I'm an idiot.
I told you they're going to win the conference last year. I'm going to go Eastern win. You know, it's mid-October on the Palouse. You never know what the hell the weather's going to be like. Been there, done that enough in my life. So I'm gonna go Weber. I'm gonna go Eastern at home.
Eastern at home. I'm also taking Eastern at home. Like I said, this isn't as crazy as those of you that watched Tubbs last year, like me just being absolute sting us down every opportunity. This is, I just think Sac State is going to regress slightly back more to the norm. I mean, they had their star running back just leave because he didn't like the team. They're still running a 2-quarterback system, technically. They lost their tight end. I'm Pierre Williams, right? I think so. I just think it's going to be a small dip back for Sac State this year. They're not the 3rd best team in the conference this year. Eastern will beat them at home.
It's homecoming for Eastern. Sac State, I mean, yes, they won it outright last year, the Big Sky, but they also didn't play 3 of the top 5 teams. They were gifted a very easy schedule last year. I think if Eastern played that schedule, they would have literally had 0 losses, maybe 1. Yeah, give me Eastern beating Sac State. I'm not a big believer in them. Yeah, they're still going to be good. They're still going to be a playoff caliber team, but give me Eastern in a very close battle at homecoming in Cheney.
Yeah, and then week 8, they're traveling down in homecoming of sorts to Bo Baldwin's backyard to face off against the new look Cal Poly Mustangs, team that we've already covered. So if you're interested in them, click the old box up by the Instagram logo. You can watch their preview. But what do you guys think about Cal Poly, Alex? You think Poly can get one over on the Eagles, or Eagles blow past them? And you have them at 500 at the moment, so this is a tipping point for their season.
It's a Bo Baldwin Bowl. Say that 5 times fast. I'm gonna go Eastern on the road. There's a better team.
From a 3-game lose streak to a 3-game win streak.
I mean, it's situational. I mean, it's not like it's just the way the schedule lays out.
Yeah, I agree. They'll beat Cal Poly. I mean, Cal Poly's just not there yet. In 2-3 years, maybe this game does have some of that like old coach against his protege and Aaron Best like animosity, and maybe becomes a quasi rivalry. But the moment Bo just doesn't have the roster full of players he needs to make his system work. Eastern does. Kyler?
Yeah, this is such a fun, interesting, matchup just because it's like all of Eastern Washington coaches are at Cal Poly and Sac State. So it's kind of a fun back-to-back week. But yeah, looking at Cal Poly's roster, I just don't think they have the talent to compete with Eastern. So yeah, give me Eastern winning fairly convincingly.
All right, so everybody has them up over 500 now as they host the Dam Cup at home against Portland State. Alex?
Top 5 Portland State.
Top
Please
5
give
Portland
them
State.
their due respect. Still give me Eastern at home. They are still better than Portland State, even so the enigma that is Portland State, who just is terrible sometimes or very good, but I still think Eastern's better.
Yeah. It's me. They beat Portland State. They don't have an immediate replacement for Davis Alexander, I believe. And even with Davis, these games weren't that close. So
wait. You're not going with what's his name again?
One of their 12 quarterbacks?
Irwin Sr.
Yeah, Davis Irwin Sr., right? Mike Irwin Sr. That's
number 0, Mike Irwin Sr.
Mike Irwin Sr.
I do have our picks right here. For those of you guys that didn't watch, the Portland State episode was an absolute ball. Maybe my favorite one we've done so far. So check out the Portland State episode. But no, I'm not going with Mike Irwin Sr., number 0 at quarterback against the Eagles.
Give me Eastern.
All right, the Dam Cup stays in Cheney. Then they are hosting the Red Scare, the Cold War, the Battle of the Palouse. So it's not the Battle of the Palouse.
They're not hosting. They're not hosting.
Or sorry,
the
they're
road.
traveling. They are traveling
Mm-hmm.
to the Kibbles and Bits
Mm-hmm.
Dome.
Mm-hmm.
Alex.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Idaho. I made that pick earlier in the Idaho episode. Sticking to it. Give me the Vandies.
Yeah, I made this pick earlier in the Idaho episode as well. I think Eck is going to have a little bit of a wake-up call on some of these rivalries year one. I do think Eastern becomes one he focuses on more. So I think that the streak gets broken. Aaron Best gets the dub in the Dome.
I'm going to call this the big guy bowl. Big guy bowl.
Yeah.
Between Best and Eck, it's the big guy
bowl.
Yeah.
Battle of the trenches. Kyler?
Yep, I'm going to take Eastern in this one, but I think it's going to come down to the wire. It's going to be a good game either way.
All right. Well, so we're at 5-4, 7-2, and 6-3. We all have different records, which is fun. It makes it different as they head into what's arguably their biggest rival, number 3 Montana in Missoula. Boatman, they're going to be able to beat Bobby Houck and the Grizz.
I hate the Grizz, but no, they're not. So, yeah, Montana.
Tyler? All right, sorry, me. Yeah, I think Montana actually is probably going to make this game very embarrassing for Eastern. The last time they played, Eastern was way better. Montana was worse, and it still wasn't even that competitive a game. Montana's a way better team now. Unfortunately, I think this might be worse. No, it won't be worse than the FBS games, but it'll be their worst loss in the FCS for sure, which I guess I haven't had them losing in the FCS yet. So that's just factually correct for me.
Well, I definitely don't think it's going to be as embarrassing as what you guys are thinking. The only reason why it even got out of hand last time was the special teams couldn't get the ball down the field. I mean, if you looked at the stats, Eastern actually blew them away on every aspect of it besides special teams. The defense for Eastern should be significantly improved. The special team should be significantly improved, but I'm still going to pick Montana in a win, probably by 10 or so. But yeah, I don't think it's going to be remotely embarrassing. But
all right, last game.
I don't think it's going to be embarrassing. I just think, Montana by at least a touchdown. What's the score?
Last game of the year, Northern Colorado at home, senior night.
Toughest game.
Possibly, depending on whose thing you're looking at, playoff spot up on the line. Otherwise, last game of the year. Alex?
This is the game that propels Eastern above 500 for me. I'm finishing 6-5, beating the Bears.
All right, 6-5, 500 record. Above 500 record. I'm going to give them the win over the Bears as well, which now that I'm looking at this, I don't think
exactly
3.
That's the thing, Chris.
Hey, I think the big ones are Montana State and the Weber are kind of those swing games. Those could go either way. So for me, you can finish anywhere between 6-4 and 8-3, in my opinion. So there you go, Eastern fans.
You mean 6-5?
Tyler? Yeah, sorry, 6-5.
Yeah, we beat Northern Colorado. I don't think we even needed a quarterback last year, and I don't see how Northern Colorado improves that much and Eastern regresses that much. So I have us at 7-4 right now because I don't think Afonse's playing in that first month. If Afonse plays, I think we're going to be 6-5, which is kind of around. I think we can go anywhere from 5-6 to a realistically, 8-3 would be the best case scenario, but realistically, 5-6 to 7-4 is what probably Eastern's going to do.
So
this year.
I do want to play a little with this. Like we'll take Boatman's record at 6-5. That still makes them, because for once they're not scheduling a D2 or anything school. That still makes them 6-3 against the FCS. Could they be a last 4 in type school at 6-3? With even in Boatman's schedule, that would be a win over Weber State, a win over Sac State, and like you guys said, a close loss to Montana. And then we talked about Montana State maybe being either way.
I guess that depends on how the rest of the Big Sky shakes out and how the rest of the Missouri Valley shakes out, right? Like we've seen a 6-5 Northern Iowa make it, so you can see a 6-5 Eastern make it. It's possible. It's definitely possible, but it just
because this year's going to be interesting. We don't.
If there's just not a good other depth of teams that you can make that the Eastern's actually probably better than, but because that doesn't matter sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Like you could see some freaking SoCon school who go 8-3 who sucks, but they make it in, or even in 7-4, right? It just if they have seven FCS wins potentially, they might just sneak in versus an Eastern, which I think is stupid, but just the way the committee works depends on, right? Are we putting 6 Big Sky teams in the playoffs, right? Like, and that's the thing, right? I mean,
possibly because no James Madison, no Sam Houston State, and no Jacksonville State. 3 teams that are traditionally either getting an auto bid or they are filling in as like an at large.
But that's just
3 teams that we're not used to.
That's just going to allow other teams to win more games in those conferences, in my opinion, right? That's going to be allowed. The CAA has so many teams that might allow like a New Hampshire randomly to win another game, right? That then propels them in. So, yeah, I don't know if they go under Kyler's scenario, if they go 7 wins, they're in. Under mine, they don't make it, in my opinion.
Last 4 out kind of team.
No, I don't think a 6-5 Big Sky team makes it no matter what. I just don't think so. Eastern Washington was 1 year 7-4, number 17 in the nation, and they picked NAU, who wasn't even ranked, over Eastern. For some reason, the committee really hates Eastern Washington. We should have been a seed last year. We weren't a seed. We should have made the playoffs in 2019 and 2017 because we were ranked higher than a lot of teams that made it. Still didn't get in. So I think the limit is 7. If they get 7 wins, they're in with this schedule. Anything less, absolutely not. It's going to go to a Missouri Valley team.
So
because under mine, right? The only team that they're beating here that's currently ranked is Sac State under like my 6-5 scenario, right?
Yeah,
which is the one we're trying to play out. So you're having 1 ranked win, like that doesn't make it.
Well, you haven't beaten Weber State.
Oh, you're right. 2 ranked wins. I still don't think that makes you going 2-2 in your own conference versus ranked teams, versus other weak opponents in your conference, right? I mean, that's just the way the Big Sky is. Yeah. You can't point like Tennessee State because they're in the OVC. They're not in the.
Yeah,
I always forget how HBCUs fall now.
They're in the OVC.
They used to be one of like 3 that weren't in the MEAC swag.
That's right. So, I mean, it also depends on how they do, right? If they end up winning a couple games, if they do well in the OVC and they win the conference like you maybe predicted, hey, maybe that does help them, right? But yeah, I don't know. 6-5, probably not in.
Yeah. So I guess for takeaways, Boatman, I kind of want to hear you play out your your best hot seat. Like I said, you think 6-5 puts him on the hot seat?
Well, he's on the hot seat right now, but I mean, we've seen, like Kyler said, in 2019 when they missed the playoffs, and they should have been in, and they had Eric Berry at quarterback. Like, people were still calling for his head. Like, what would it do? What this would make fans really sit, and it'd be a lot of pressure on him to come in 2023 is what this would do if they finish at 6-5, like a lot. Yeah, it would be like the beginning of the hot seat. That's how I have it. That's why I kind of previewed that earlier.
Yeah, because I would say like my takeaway is, as I've touched on, is kind of what I'm looking for out of Eastern is like Gunnar Talkington. So it's more of a 2023 question, but we'll get a little bit of it. This is the first quarterback that Best will have to recruit as the head coach, where he's a little less involved in recruiting. He was apparently instrumental in getting Barriere to go there. So we know he can recruit, but can his staff be trusted to bring in the consistent quarterbacks that obviously he has been a huge part in getting, as we touched on, going back almost 13, 14 years now. They've had Walter Payton Award winners. Can a Best-led staff find that guy, or is Best instrumental in getting these dudes? That's what I'm curious to see. Is like they've been able to reload when Best was the OC, offensive line coach, and a part of recruiting. Now that he's the head guy and he has guys under him recruiting, can they fill that spot? Because Barriere was technically a inherited commodity from the Bo Baldwin leave, but obviously
technically
Best was huge in getting him and got him for all of his time there. But that's what I'm looking at. It'll just be curious to watch, in my opinion, is to see who the next Eastern guy is. And I do think we might have a stopgap year. Either way, we're gonna have a stopgap year because Talkington's only there for 1 year. Mm-hmm. So 2023 will be interesting. I think that's like my takeaway for Eagles fans is like enjoy 2022. 2023 is, I think, where the rubber meets the road. Do they have a quarterback on this roster? 2023.
Who's a transfer?
Yeah, might get a transfer. Kyler, any takeaways for your loyal Eagle fans that you don't want to spoil for an Eagles Power Hour episode?
Nope. I've heard that a lot of Eastern fans think we're going to be really bad. Some think we're going to be really good. I kind of think this is just, we have still some of the most talent in the Big Sky. Probably going to take a little step back. But as long as we see some positives in areas that we struggled last year, like in the defending the run and special teams, then I like where we're at for 2023. But brutal schedule. You're reloading some key positions. Don't expect to win a national title. Also, don't expect that we're not a playoff caliber team. Kind of expect somewhere in the middle. We're either going to be a playoff caliber team or a playoff spoiler, and it's still going to be a fun season.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's your 2022 Eastern Washington Eagles of the Big Sky preview. We will catch you guys tomorrow with the UC Davis Aggies.